Welcome back to another Check Swing podcast with myself, Mr. J. Watson, Radio Man. Can't you hear me?
It's low.
It's low.
All right, keep going.
Turn your volume up.
Thank you so much.
Turn your volume up. I'm yelling over here. Is that better?
No, but go ahead.
All right. Well, we're gonna work with this. Let me turn this up a little bit. Welcome to the Check Swing podcast with myself, J. Watson, Radio Man, and my man over there, my man Miguel Santa.
You always go right first. You always go right.
It's flipped. It's flipped over here. So
Okay,
I got to do
it.
something. And if you don't see my uncle back there, my uncle Jackie back there, his old photo from when he played with the Brooklyn Dodgers. You see that? First, he broke the color barrier. You may have heard of him.
I see. Y'all have a weird resemblance.
We do. It's kind of funny. All right. Well, welcome to the Check Swing podcast. Y'all know how I like to do every show. I like to ask my people, how you been, Miguel? It's been a week. How you been?
Doing well, sir. It's cold as hell. I'd love to call Florida and borrow some of their heat, although they're under a cold spell too. So,
yeah, I'm about to say that it's not that cold, not warm in Florida right now.
But as Fred Sanford used to say, this cold is really hurting my arthritis.
Yes,
it's keeping me from coordinating.
Well, you gotta learn how to make it happen in the cold sometimes.
I hate the cold.
Sometimes it's cold out.
I used to love the cold, not so much anymore.
Sometimes it's cold out. We got a good show today. We're going to be talking about, of course, the future of the Hall of Fame, as you already know. Who might be getting in the future? Are they worthy of getting in? Should they be in? We'll talk about that. We will also talk about Brian Flores, the former Miami Dolphins football coach, has a lawsuit pending with the league. We'll continue that discussion, as well as, excuse me, if we have time for it, we're going to talk about a certain University of Pennsylvania swimmer that have been making headlines, and we'll bring that up as well. But without further ado, we have a guest with us today, a very special guest. No stranger to New Twist Radio, no stranger to the Check Swing podcast, and actually no stranger to the broadcast today because we just finished the show about an hour ago.
Nice segue.
My partner on the Intelligent Ignorance podcast. All these shows are starting to run together to me now. My man. All right, I messed that up. I'm gonna do that one more time. Something got in my way over here.
Take two.
Here we go. My man. Where is it? My man R. Hunter. Coach Hunter is in the building. Welcome back, brother. Welcome back.
Hello, sir.
Had to switch it up this time. It's coach for this show.
It's coach for this show. Coach Hunter.
I need my respect.
Absolutely. And you're going to get it. But
Yes,
I definitely wanted to bring you in on this show. I'm not going to ask you how you've been because if the people was watching, they already know how you've been.
They know.
Watching the show. But you can also check out if you missed any of the other show, The Intelligent Ignorance, that we just did live, go to the YouTube channel after you're done watching this. And you can go ahead and watch that show. Miguel was watching the show. He commented on the show. We appreciate it.
And make sure to put in your order for the Latino colored bandages.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. But
I got a box for you, Miguel. I'm sending them to you.
I appreciate you, sir.
So for the last couple of weeks, we discussed the Hall of Fame here on the Check Swing podcast. Those that have been with us, they know that very well. We discussed the nominees, and then we discussed the one person that got in and the people that did not get in. We've had that discussion, but we want to talk about the future now, okay? And the reason I want to talk about this because our Coach Hunter had a couple posts over the past week on Instagram that I found very interesting, especially when it came to our conversation that we had last week on the show here. We were talking about the future, the next year's ballot and the following year's ballot, the people who are eligible and who gets on. And I'm going to apologize for the people right now. I failed to ask RDOT to send me the graphic. So we don't have the graphic, but we could just name some of the names. We put the names out there for you before. But some of the notable names that I'm just off the top of my head that I remember, You had Chase Utley. You had Trevor. No,
So
Jared.
I can
Jared.
give them to you right now.
Go ahead, read them out to me.
All right, so 2023 Hall of Fame eligible: Carlos Beltran, Francisco Rodriguez, Jared Weaver, R.A. Dickey, Jason Worth, Andre Ethier, John Lackey, Matt Cain, Bronson Arroyo, Jacoby Ellsbury, J.J. Hardy, and Johnny Peralta. That's 2023.
And none of them are getting in the Hall of Fame. I did because I think we talked about this over the course of time. Like when you hear a name, like you hear like J.J. Hardy, I remember him, but like Hall of Fame, Carlos Beltran, I remember him maybe, but I got to look at the numbers. But when you hear a name and the first thought is like, there's nothing exciting on that list.
So my first and only thought was Beltran could possibly be the only one getting it.
If anybody with Beltran.
That's what I was thinking too, Beltran. For some reason, and maybe it's just because I kind of remember him, I was thinking maybe Jared Weaver gets in. Maybe. I just remember him being a hard thrower. He was dominant for like a couple years. Not really a long time. You know, usually pitchers got to be dominant for a long time to get in.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't know. That class doesn't seem too strong. Beltran is the strongest candidate, I think.
Yeah.
And outside of that, it's like, I didn't even think Jason Worth was going to be like nominated to be.
I couldn't understand how he even appeared on the list.
No, go ahead, Art. I'm sorry.
No, I was just thinking. So he appears on the list because he's an eligible candidate at this point because he's been out of the league for 5 years.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean he will appear on a ballot, which I don't even think he should, honestly.
So the names you gave us were people that are eligible now.
Correct. Now that they've been retired for 5 years.
Here's one of the things that, for me, when it's kind of like what Miguel said, when you hear the name and you're kind of like, But here's one of the things for me, and I actually sent this to you in a post, Coach Hunter. Would we think the same way about these guys had the steroid era not inflated some numbers?
Right.
Like we're coming out of an era of the steroid. I'm gonna call it the steroid era, where a lot of the people that are on the Hall of Fame ballot and those that didn't get in, numbers are what they are, right? But then you got the guys that were not part of the steroid scandal, maybe, whose numbers aren't as inflated as maybe some of the other guys. But would that be the baseline had it not been for the PEDs?
And I think so. When we had that conversation, the main individual that I brought up in comparison to David Ortiz getting in was Fred Mcgriff. Mm-hmm. And, you know, their career numbers are virtually identical.
Ortiz and McGriff.
Ortiz to McGriff.
Okay.
So what is the difference between David Ortiz getting in first ballot and Fred Mcgriff not getting in other than media hype?
Well, Miguel, I'll let you.
No, we kind of touched on that last week. I think the markets that they played in, because when you compare Fred Mcgriff, I mean, he started off Toronto, then San Diego, then he went to Atlanta, even won a World Series in Atlanta, but still it's Atlanta, you know what I mean? And then he finished off in Tampa Bay. So he wasn't, you know, everybody remembers the crime dog swing, his defense, all that good stuff. But when you remember Big Papi, you know, playing against the Yankees, you know, 12, 15 times a year, and two big media markets, the brawls, you know, everything like that, there was just so much spotlight on David Ortiz, even during the steroid era. And Fred Mcgriff, you know, was not that he was caught or it was still legal at the time when he played, but it wasn't. It was just kind of like, oh well, if they're doing it, so what? It's not that big a deal. And then after the strike, and then McGuire and Sosa and all that happened. So I think the central issue is the media hype.
I think, well, I'm going to read this. Ezekiel Hernandez, he chimes in and says, the guys who are steroid era were still great players outside of that.
That's true.
So right. I also had this debate, steroid era. And David Ortiz was, again, the focus of the conversation. When you look at the numbers in Minnesota, and then you look at the numbers in Boston, he had 2 separate careers. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that in Boston, he has an anonymous test as to where he tests positive for PEDs. I'm not saying that he did it. I'm not saying that he didn't. Well, the market, players can become better players when they leave a certain place. It is what it is. There are places that can hold you back.
I think that, and you're absolutely right about that. We've seen it. I hate to say this. We've seen it so many times here in Philadelphia where a player is whatever they are here and they go somewhere else and they excel.
Russell Douglas, baby.
The weak-minded players. Okay. I think David Ortiz, and I said this last week on the show. I think I said it last week on the show. I think David Ortiz saved his Hall of Fame status. There's 2 reasons I think. I got two theories on this. One was after the marathon bombing, the speech he had in front of the crowd at Fenway. I think that gave him a real positive outlook on things that kind of pushed that whole I forgot about the positive test, to be honest with you. But that kind of pushed that to the side. Like, people talk about that way more than they talk about a positive test for David Ortiz. The other thing is, like y'all said, he played in a city and in a conference that is high media value. You're playing against the
oldest rival in baseball.
You're playing against them 20 times a year. ESPN's going to talk about it. If the Yankees and the Red Sox are playing, it's going to be on TV. It's going to be talked about. It's going to be attention. Had he played in Minnesota his entire career, and still, let's put it like this: if he had played in Minnesota his entire career and still had the same numbers and never had that speech, he may not be a Hall of Famer right now.
And Fred McGriff might actually be in.
Fred McGriff might actually be in.
Just saying.
But Fred McGriff also played for a team at a time when they were probably at their greatest. Atlanta Braves were probably at their greatest in the 90s. That whole era, right? So I would think Fred McGriff would have gotten in too. The one thing about Fred McGriff, though, in Atlanta, he wasn't the only star. And he wasn't the biggest star, right? You had David Justice. You had guys like not as much of an extent. You had the Deion Sanders. You had the Brian Jordans. You had the Chipper Joneses. You had the Andrew Joneses. So he wasn't necessarily ever the biggest star on that team. Had he been, maybe it would be different.
Would you think you think Ortiz was the biggest star on those championship teams? Because you had Manny Ramirez, you had Pedro.
So let me tackle it first. I'm gonna let R-Dot, because R-Dot's a Yankees fan, but I'm gonna tackle this first.
You're a Yankees. I forgot about that.
Yeah, he's a Yankee fan.
You know what? I'm cool with that as long as you're not a Cowboys fan. Listen, as long as you're not rooting for the Silver, I'm cool. I swear to you, I'm cool.
His football team has another iconic emblem on the side of their helmet.
The horseshoe.
The horseshoe.
Really? I can respect that. Oh, I forgot. I forgot. I saw your your doctorate on Carson Wentz. Your dissertation on Carson Wentz. All right, let's pull it back. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, because I forgot what I was about to say. You know me, I got 30 seconds to hold a thought. I forgot what I was about to say. I forgot what I was about to say. So.
Well, let me hop in.
Oh, I remember now. The rivalry thing, right?
Yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah.
Oh, was he the biggest star? So this might sound weird, but you guys that know me will probably understand it. Was he the biggest star on the Red Sox? Baseball wise, as an everyday player, baseball wise, I think yes. Overall, no. Manny was the biggest star on that team overall, right? And his star grew as he got closer to the end of his career. Ortiz was the biggest star baseball wise that wasn't a pitcher on that team, in my opinion. I'm gonna give you the floor for this one as a Yankee fan that saw Ortiz for many, many years. What are your thoughts on it? Try not to be biased.
No, and a lot of people have painted my opinions on Ortiz bias simply because I'm a Yankees fan. I truly believe that. I believe David Ortiz is a Hall of Famer. I did not believe he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, but that is what it is. I believe he became the biggest star for the Boston Red Sox when they came back and beat the Yankees down 3-0.
That's when he became the star.
That's when he became
the
biggest star on the Red Sox.
For sure. I definitely give you that one for sure. But was he the biggest star
from that point on? It was
that's when he became the biggest star on the Red Sox?
Yes.
Okay.
Because he hit the game-winning home run. It was game 5, right?
Game 5.
I still can't believe that happened. Be honest with you.
And that was the game 5 was
can't believe it either.
Game 5. Game 5 was also the Dave Roberts stolen base, or was that game 4?
That was game 4.
That was game 4. Okay. I'm not trying to get you. I swear, I'm not trying to open any old wounds. I swear.
I mean, it's all been opened over the last since the induction. Everybody has brought it up, so it is what it is at this point.
No, there's like two ways I can troll Coach Hunter without really trolling him. And honestly, honest to God, when I mention these people, I don't mean to troll him, but every time I mention them, he reminds me, like, shut up, watch your mouth. One person I mention them all the time. I mention him at least 3 times a month. Juan Pierre. When I mention him, it strikes a chord.
That's your boy.
I know, but that's my boy, and it strikes a chord with him because he's a big part of.
Okay.
And the other one that strikes a chord with him a little bit is when I say, "Oh, I forgot the Diamondbacks won the World Series," because I do. That was like for whatever reason, that was forgettable. That was a forgettable World Series, honestly.
On a blue, that was a great World Series.
It was a good World Series, but nobody ever talks about it. Ever. Like when have you talked about that World Series?
Yeah, I think if the Yankees would have won that, because that was the year of 9/11.
It would have been talked about. We should have won.
You should have.
The cards for the Yankees to win.
You should have.
But so my debates with this Hall of Fame thing over the last week, literally, it spawned a question, and I asked it on social media, and I wanted to ask it to you two, being some of the best baseball minds that I know personally. When we have these debates about Hall of Fame, how can we begin to define a baseline criteria for entrance into the Hall of Fame? Because it's so subjective. We look at the numbers for Fred McGriff. We look at the numbers for David Ortiz. They're the same player. So it's not statistical, so to speak, as to why one is in and the other is not. So why does one get denied when the other gets accepted on the first ballot when they have the same numbers?
And it goes back to Justin's beef is that there's only one group of people that are in charge of the voting process, which is the baseball writers. I think you have, and we've been debating this back and forth. I think you have to open it up to, I say fans, but only as a percentage, because I mean, if you just allowed a fan vote, players like Jason Worth would actually get into the Hall of Fame. But I think if you do it in a way, it's like a teacher that grades, any student, 20% of your grade is like for presentations, 20% is effort, all that stuff. So why not do it the same way? So that way we as fans have a vested and vested interest, and we can, and our vote will count. And then you have the managers, because managers know the real download behind the scenes. Because at the end of the day, when you're relying on writers' jobs are to tell stories. And they create, so a lot of players, they create personas. And Coach Hunter, I don't know if you ever saw them. You ever seen the movie 61?
Yes.
And I always point to
I
that.
saw that one.
Oh, I know you saw it. But I always point to that movie because you have Roger Maris, who was like, kind of a happy-go-lucky, I'm just happy to be in the big leagues kind of guy. You have Mickey Mantle, who was like greater than sliced bread, going after the coveted Babe Ruth record. And they actually were trashing Roger Maris because he wasn't New York enough.
Right.
You dig what I'm saying? So, and the writers were the ones that were responsible for putting the asterisk on his record. The writers, not the fans, not the players, not the managers. The writers, whose only job is to tell stories, whose only stories are conflicts. You dig what I mean? So right. I think you have to blow it up. I think you have to change the process. Yes, you have the writer's opinion, but you also have the teammates' opinion. So you can include teammates in that vote, the managers, and the fans. I think that's probably the fairest way to do it. So that way a Barry Bonds could actually get in as a first ballot. Like I think he was the first ballot All Hall of Famer before steroids and all that. We all agree.
His Pittsburgh career was first ballot Hall of Fame.
That's what I'm saying. So if we, and I think too, you might, because everybody's like steroid era, when did it start? I mean, if you wanted to kind of mark a demarcation like 2002, whenever the Mitchell report came out, what were their stats before then? That kind of could be an easy benchmark or an easy marker to say, all right, everybody prior to 2002, what were your stats?
But we knew that Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco were using in Oakland.
In 1988, exactly.
Right.
So
we knew Lenny Dykstra was using a lot more than steroids.
Yeah, but he's too much of a douchebag to get in. I mean, he's sleeping with midgets. It's a bad story, but it's like I think you have to change the way it's voted on. I think you have to include more people that are truly vested in the game and not trying to tell a story or not trying to put people on an improper pedestal.
So now that was one of the answers that I received, and I kind of played on it with the other sports. And it seems like baseball is the only one that almost gets it wrong from time to time. So football is relatively the same process. It's a media induction as opposed to player, fan, anything else. Same with basketball. It is, we never have these debates saying, hey, this basketball player should be in the Hall of Fame, and they're not. And we don't have these debates saying, hey, this football player should be in the Hall of Fame, and they're not. But baseball sports writers seem to get it wrong more often than they get it right.
I would agree with that. Miguel knows I agree with that.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Here's something to think about in conjunction with what you just said.
Yeah.
When we have a basketball ballot or a football ballot, right? Before we even know who's getting in, we go through that ballot. Oh yeah, he's getting in. He's definitely getting in. And if he doesn't get in, it's gonna be crazy, but he'll get in on the next one. Right? Like we had Randy Moss, we knew he was getting in. T.O., we knew he was getting in eventually. He should have got in first ballot, but he got in.
Right.
Some of the other Brian Dawkins when he got in. We know Tom Brady's surefire. They probably going to do something and be like, look, we need Tom Brady to just go in next year. You know,
He,
what I mean,
he,
Kobe
he could
Bryant
probably,
basketball,
he's going in tomorrow at like 12.
Shaquille O'Neal basketball. Like there are surefire guys that are like, without looking at stats, you're like, oh yeah, they
Right.
need to
He's
be in.
going. Right.
We don't argue stats in basketball Hall of Fame. We don't argue stats with the football Hall of Fame. It's only baseball,
Right.
and baseball is the only Hall of Fame situation in which we say we feel like people that deserve to get in almost never, sometimes never get in.
Never get it.
I that's just something I don't. Pete Rose, right? I know there's a reason why he's not in, but he deserves to be in. He should be in.
Especially now that they pretty much formally fund gambling, and gambling partially funds the sport. And they're like,
Exactly.
come on with the hypocrisy. You dig what I'm
He
saying?
was ahead of his time. That's all.
He was ahead of the game, absolutely.
And
My
my
only,
and my one oh go ahead.
go ahead, no, go ahead.
My biggest gripe was that is that he was betting on his own team.
Right.
Like it's not like he was betting against himself and throwing games.
Right.
Betting on his own team. So a rule's a rule, but still, the Baseball Hall of Fame gets it wrong all the time. I don't know why, but let's put it this way: Barry Bonds is not in, not because of steroids, because the writers did not like him.
Right.
It's the only, if it were not for steroids, they really wouldn't have a reason to keep him out.
Right.
Think about that.
And I
They
think
don't have a reason to keep
They
him
would
out
not have a
regardless
reason
of
to keep him out.
steroids.
Say it again, Ryan.
They don't have a reason to keep him out regardless of steroids.
right.
Well, what I'm saying is, you're right. But what I'm saying is, they can always lean on, I didn't want to put him in because of steroids.
Right.
Not one writer is going to say, I didn't vote for him because I didn't like him. I didn't vote for him because of the way he treated. None of them are going to say that, but all of them did it for that reason.
Right.
I can compare it to living in Pennsylvania all my life to now moving down to the DMV. I realize now that Pennsylvania is so mired in like traditions that mean nothing. They're trivial now. And I think that's the baseball writers. It's like they're so focused on, well, I remember when we were down in Atlanta and, he was going to sign this bat. This actually, Lenny Dykstra did this. And he said, suck my whatever on the back because a taxi cab driver would always like collect autographs and stuff. Like Lenny Dykstra actually did that. But a baseball writer will remember that and turn that into an embellished story, turn it into like a 30-chapter book. But in all the other sports, it's like, man, did you see that catch, Steve Young to T.O. in overtime? Like, did you see, the touchdown dances and the stats, and he had the most catches in the game, stuff like that. But in baseball, it's always about, and I always beat this to death, but it's the stories of like Dick Allen and his horse betting and him being an alcoholic allegedly, and him. But what it came down to is that he stood up during the civil rights era and said, look, I'm not taking this stuff from y'all. You know what I mean? Being uppity or not knowing your place and stuff like that. That's kind of the modern day version of, Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds. Because I guarantee if Mark McGwire was on that ballot, he probably would have got more votes than Barry Bonds from the baseball writers. Because not for nothing, Mark McGwire set up that PR tour with Bob Costas and, a open book. I did steroids, but, I had my reasons, I apologized. And then almost immediately he got a job in baseball. But with Barry Bonds, people don't realize, like, he was part of a baseball family. His father was, a legend. He played next to Willie Mays. So you can imagine the racism that they experienced on top of what Barry Bonds saw them go through.
Right.
You dig what I'm saying? So he carried that chip on his shoulder going into the big leagues. So yes, he was always a jerk to the media, but he was a jerk when he was off steroids and whether he was on it or not.
I'm going to end this segment by saying this. I'm going to say this for Barry Bonds and in the explanation of kind of what you just said, and by doing that, I'm going to quote the great Sean Carter, Jay-Z. I believe Barry Bonds, when it came to the media and those things, I believe he was overcharging them for what they did to the Cold Crush. What I mean by that, you said that he saw how his godfather and his father were
That's
treated,
probably
Willie Mays and Bobby Bonds, um, coming up through the ranks, and he wasn't for it. He said, "Y'all treated my people like this. Well, I'm gonna treat you like this because they got treated this way. I'm gonna treat you this way." And this is their way of paying them back by not putting them in the Hall of Fame. That's just how I feel about it. He was Barry Bonds was doing a solid and did it consistently through his career, and now they're trying to pay him back for it. That's just my opinion. All right, but we're gonna
man.
move. Go ahead.
No, I was saying mad respect because at the end of the day, he was who he was and he didn't change. So mad respect to that.
Let's move on to Brian Flores, NFL coach Brian Flores, former Dolphins head coach, as you may or may not know, has a lawsuit against the NFL for there's. I'm gonna let R Dot. Excuse me. I'm used to calling him R Dot. He's Coach Hunter right now. I'm gonna let Coach Hunter
And more,
explain it. He did it on the last show, Intelligent English. I'm gonna let him explain it on this one.
I'm gonna try to keep it shorter than I did last show because I went about 10 minutes into the explanation.
It happens.
Brian Flores, former coach of the Miami Dolphins, has filed a lawsuit against the NFL and three teams, the Miami Dolphins, New York Giants, and Denver Broncos, alleging bias in their hiring processes, which, newsflash, water is wet. In his tenure with the Dolphins, he stated that he was asked to tank games and offered a substantial amount of money per game that they lost. In New York, he was just interviewing for the head coaching position. He was beat out by Brian Daboll, but he found out that he was beat out by Brian Daboll from an erroneous text message from Bill Belichick congratulating him for getting the job. And then Belichick realized that he texted the wrong Brian.
So Miguel and I were just talking. I actually meant to bring this up on Intelligent Ignorance a couple hours ago. I already said it to Miguel. Art out, I'm gonna say it to you. I don't believe that text message was sent by mistake. I just don't. Now I know technology is different and all like that. And he's an older guy, and he claimed that I don't know about the what he called it, the face snap and all like that, snap book, whatever he called it. But Bill Belichick, I don't know him personally, but Bill Belichick, I believe, sent that text message on purpose to shake some things up. I really do. I believe, because not only did he send a text message, but he continued to have a conversation. How long is it before you realize you're talking to the wrong person on text message?
Well, no. So, and
because I noticed it right away personally. I sent it. Oh, damn! I didn't mean to send that to them. Can't do anything about it now. You know what I mean? I know they're both named Brian.
Right.
Still,
so
I know a lot of Brians too.
I can see both sides of how it happens, and I would say that we are giving Belichick way too much credit diabolically if he did it that way. And that's exactly right, Ezekiel. If that text message didn't have, the text message is the basis for the lawsuit.
Right.
And in that message, when Brian Flores says, "Did you hear something that I didn't?" I feel like that's when Belichick starts looking like, "Oh,
Sugar honey iced tea.
I'd have messed this one up." So then he keeps the thread going, saying, "I heard from Buffalo and New York that you're the guy." And then Flores says, "Did you mean to text me or Daboll?" And that's when Belichick says, "Ooh, I effed this up." And he says it in the text thread. ooh, I effed this up. They meant they were talking about Dabo.
I still ain't
So
buying it completely.
do I think that Belichick is that diabolical to do that?
Yes.
I don't think
Yes.
so. I don't.
I think this is an FU from him to Goodell for Deflategate, for Spygate, for even him possibly throwing the Super Bowl against the Eagles. I think this is.
Stop saying that.
I think this is. Why is Malcolm Butler not playing? I think this is the. I think he's that diabolical. I absolutely do.
Also, let me just say this, and I'm just putting this out there just to add some fuel to the fire. Also, Tom Brady announced his retirement, so let's take some of that shine off of his coin a little bit. Let's get the let's take all the talk away from Brady's retirement. Let's talk about some other stuff going on in the NFL.
Because Tom did not mention New England or Belichick or Kraft.
You caught that, right?
And I don't think he didn't mention that. That's not a mistake.
Oh, of course not.
It's not a mistake.
No, it's definitely not a mistake.
Not a mistake. So how do you guys think? Go ahead, Ardat.
No, what were you going to ask?
I was going to say, how do you guys think this? How do you guys think this plays out? Because I mean, Flores probably won't be coaching in the NFL anytime soon. Not because of all because of the lawsuit, not because of his coaching style. I mean, Miami deemed him too difficult to work with after we find out that it was all about the money. He didn't want to take this money to lose and blah, blah, blah. Well, how does this play out for him?
So I'll answer your question with a question.
Damn it. I hate when that happens. Go ahead.
How did the last 400 years of racism work out?
Not well.
I don't really see anything different.
This is a Kaepernick. To me, this is a Kaepernick type situation. He spoke out. Kaepernick spoke out. Hasn't played another down of football
but people forget, and not just take anything away from it, but Kaepernick did get paid, because remember he won the lawsuit.
He got paid.
He did win the lawsuit.
He got paid.
He settled.
No, Flores is going to get paid. That's plain and simple. Flores is going to get paid, but he's constantly said, in the theme in all of his interviews today. I watched him on CNN. I watched him. Good Morning America. I watched him on Get Up this morning. His constant theme was he wants to help change come forth, and he wants to change the minds and hearts of these individuals. And the last time I checked, I have yet to see a racist say, you know what? I changed my mind about you.
I know a story where somebody did say that.
I don't know.
It wasn't me though. It was actually a quick story. I'll make it real quick. My homie and his family live in an area where there's not a lot of us around, right? It's just not known for that. And he lived on the street or whatever. His kids are very respectful kids and all like that. And his neighbor a few doors down wrote him a letter one day and basically told him that your family has changed my mind about black people.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what I said when he told me. I said, wow. That never happens.
Hey, Jay, if you want to know if anybody changed, give Cindy a call.
Please.
We'll
talk about that another day. I ain't talking about that.
Damn, your whole disposition changed. My goodness.
Why you bring that up?
That's an insider we'll bring up in another episode.
We've been doing this for a very long time.
Bring that up. I still think of Anyway, all right. Let's move on to another topic.
Wow.
Right? Let's move on to something else. University of Pennsylvania. Coming into headlines over the last 4 to 6 months. A lot more lately. We're having now help me out, guys, if I'm not saying this correctly, because I'm not completely educated and versed on this community and how this community is supposed to be referred to. Transgender swimmer. He's a man competing as a woman. And I guess he's living as a woman now. I don't know. That's why I assume this is
His
happening.
name is Leah now, Leah Thomas.
Now his name is Leah Thomas, according to Miguel. But he's a man competing as a female. He's born a man, competing as a female swimmer in college, breaking all these records. Miguel, I'm gonna start with you on this one.
So what caught my attention was this announcement by USA Swimming. Okay, this policy was released yesterday. A new policy on transgender swimmers today or
Yesterday.
spelling out detailed medical requirements for trans women specifically. Um, so USA panel said that the panels. Let me read this right. So basically, to determine if a trans swimmer is eligible to compete at an elite level, they have to first go through a panel of 3 medical experts, and they will determine whether the swimmer and their prior physical development as a man gives them an athletic competitive advantage over, this is a quote, her cisgender female competitors. Part of the determination is that they have to determine that the level of testosterone in her blood has, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical expert, but I guess this is the unit of measurement. Okay. Her blood has to be less than 5 nanomoles per liter continuously of testosterone for at least 36 months. So that's what a transgender swimmer will now have to go through per the USA Swimming Corporation in order for them to swim at an elite competition.
So I love, and I'm going to go back a little bit because I know that was the announcement from USA Swimming. I absolutely loved how the NCAA handled it.
How did
This is what the NCAA did.
They said we got enough problems, huh?
The NCAA said, we will leave this to the individual sports to determine rules on transgender athletes. They said, we're not getting into it. They said, that's not up to us. Now, what I will say in Leah's
How can
case,
they say that though?
and I
They're
feel
governing
like, because right, exactly. That's the perfect answer.
Yeah.
But I feel like in Leah's case, Leah competed on the male team for UPenn for 3 years. From my understanding, you weren't that great of a swimmer as a man. But because you have undergone hormone therapy for, I believe now the baseline was 3 years, because of you undergoing that hormone therapy for the time period as a part of her transition, because now her testosterone levels are lowered by a certain amount. And I don't know what the difference is between male testosterone versus female natural testosterone, but obviously at this point you've already had more testosterone in your body for an extended period of time, which has allowed you to grow muscle, allow you to build endurance, and it's given you a lifetime of an advantage. It's almost like, and I hate to go back to the steroid era, but it's like the reverse of that. I want to play at a lower level. So I've been on steroids my entire career, and now I want to go play JV baseball, and I'm not going to use steroids. But I've already had the benefit of this for a long time. So now it has already given me a long-term competitive advantage against my competition.
Yeah,
I think she has the fastest time in the nation so far this year for a woman.
let's
For,
let's
for
let's
a
break
woman.
let's break it down like this, because everything you like. Let's break it down like this. The fastest man in the history of the earth is Usain Bolt.
Right.
Let's say Usain Bolt comes back out of retirement and decides, I want to compete as a woman.
Right.
Now I know this might be a little insensitive to the LGBT culture, people, but let's say, I mean, how fair is that to women that the fastest man in the
Who
world
work
now wants to compete as
hard
a woman?
and train for
Yeah.
their sports for a lifetime. You've
Mm-hmm.
competed naturally for a lifetime as a woman, and now this man has undergone 3 years, 36 months of hormone therapy, and now qualifies as a woman. I don't understand how that's fair. So what I would ask people, I wish we could, if there was a way that we could figure it out. Um, Bruce Jenner. Let's look at his Olympic accomplishments as a man.
And can I stop you real quick? I think it's funny how Bruce Jenner is like, they shouldn't be doing that. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't take your shine, but
No, no, no. But
okay.
what I was saying is, let's take a look at what Bruce Jenner accomplished as a Olympian, as a man,
Mm-hmm.
and then let's also compare what his numbers would have looked like as a woman during that same time frame, and how much more he could have accomplished as a woman than as a man, because the numbers were vastly different.
Right, right. And it's funny how you never see. No, it's not funny because that. Let me watch what I say because I don't want to come off
Be
as.
careful, you have to
I
be
got to be
Whoopi
careful how I
Goldberg.
say this.
You
But it's
cancel.
interesting how there's never a guy that is dominating the sport that turns around and says, "Okay, now I want to compete as a woman." I don't think we've had that yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the guys that have turned around and decided that they wanted to compete as a woman were not getting it done as guys.
Yeah, I think you have to like. I think you have to kind of go into the psychology of this a little bit to see like what is the motive. Is that the true motivating factor that he just wasn't getting it done, cutting
Just
it
strictly, was this strictly an athletic move,
right?
or was this a personal I'm me and I want to be comfortable in my life forever move? And I think that those are two very different things in terms of, because I I could honestly believe that there is somebody somewhere in America saying, this is my advantage and I can use this as my claim to fame. Now, have we seen that yet? I don't think so. But I would not, if there's somebody dumb enough to spill the McDonald's cup of coffee on their pants and sue McDonald's for the coffee being hot
And win.
and win, there is someone out there saying, I can become a woman. And you know where it's so funny to say it, but you know where we saw it first, and I always believe that art imitates life. Joanna Man.
Yeah, yeah, you're right about that one. Joanna, man, we saw it there. We saw it. I want to say there was a different one too. Was Joanna Man the first one?
I think that was
I
the
thought
first one.
I thought there was another one too. But anyway, this is probably going to be insensitive. But you know me, I sometimes I don't. Sometimes I worry about it. Sometimes I
This
don't.
this is not intelligent ignorance. You got to
It's
be
not
careful.
intelligent ignorance, but I'm still the same person on all the shows. I would like to ask him,
Her.
her. I don't know how that's supposed to happen, but I would like to ask them, when you were competing as a man, were you uncomfortable as competing as a man? and by that I mean, and like I said, it's probably insensitive. Male swimmers do not wear anything on the top half of their body. Did you feel uncomfortable doing that?
Well, and
Was
I
that
don't think it's
improper?
insensitive. I think
Huh?
it is from a place of genuine
Ignorance.
wanting to understand.
It
But I
comes
think
from a
that,
place of
but
ignorance. I
that's,
don't know.
but I guarantee, because I've had this conversation, for whatever reason, we're talking about this as three heterosexual males, but for whatever reason, when we're coming at it from like, we're trying to understand, it's a trigger for them to be insensitive. You know what I mean? So it's like they don't meet us halfway. It's kind of like going back to what Dave Chappelle was talking about. Like, we don't hate y'all. We're just trying to understand, like, where is this coming from? Where, is this Coach Hunter was saying, is this a competitive move? Is this an uncomfortability? Like, what's the purpose? Because not for nothing, but you're in life, you're in all these sports, daily news, and there's a lot of attention here. Are you trying to fight a cause that's underlying, or are you an attention whore? Did you have a bad childhood? Are you looking for attention? What's the core? And we should be able to ask that question without being told that we are, we hate LGBT, or we don't like you. That's not the core of this. We're just trying to understand. You know what I mean?
Right, and it's not as like you said, three heterosexual men. It's not in our wheelhouse. Like, this is not something that we understand. We're not going to understand it, and that community has to be understanding that that's something that we're not going to understand.
So I think that this part of the conversation ties in exactly to what my final thought was on intelligent ignorance, and it was geared towards racism, but I think it can be applied to this. When I said racism isn't a touchy topic, if you're not a racist, so
That was a good statement, man. I mean,
this this topic that we're discussing, it gets touchy in our eyes because none of us have ever lived this. None of us have ever been in these situations. So it gets to be a little touchy. It gets to be a little bit uncomfortable. But you have to have those uncomfortable conversations to really move it forward. So I'm going to see who I can reach out to and see if we can find a guest for a future conversation about this, so it doesn't seem as touchy anymore, because it's coming from a perspective of someone who has been a part of this lifestyle, who has made this transition, who has gone through and answered some of the questions that we're asking that we know we can't answer.
It's kind of like what last show we were talking about when we were talking about our teachers, and Mr. Rotundo told me, make them uncomfortable. Don't be afraid to make people uncomfortable. But also, what I pulled from that, what I didn't say earlier, don't be afraid to be uncomfortable.
Right.
It's okay. You got it. You can't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Those things.
and I'm sorry. I always think back. There was a meme or a video. I don't know if it was real or not, but a proud dad had shown a video of his daughter playing football on the football team, and I think she was like 5'1", and then the first play from scrimmage, like, she gets
Just
completely
trucked.
demolished.
Yeah.
Get demolished. I was like, and then all of a sudden the camera goes to black. I'm like, if you want to, like, in Little League, 11U, we actually faced two female pitchers. They were blowing us away too. We were all uncomfortable and stuff, but they. So my whole thing is like, all right, if you want your girl to play a man sport, expect her to be treated like a man. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because we're talking about equality. You dig what I'm saying? So, but that's another thing. I don't know why that video popped up, because I think I want to watch it again several times. But it was just.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you're going to compete, if you're going to play a sport like football with the boys,
Because I think that's the next thing. It's like, okay, you have the transgender, switching and whatnot, but then you're gonna have the argument of, well, my girl is just as good as your son. just have it all mixed. And I think the reason why the Olympics or the NCAA kind of wiped their hands of the whole situation, you saw in the last Olympics, you had the first combined unisex races, like the relay race. Was it the relay races and
Yes.
like the 4x10,
It was a
400,
4x4.
200, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of a test run, just like David Ortiz getting admitted to the Hall of Fame. I think was a test run to see what is going to be the outcry or what is going to be the numbers, if we continue to do this. So I'm hoping that Barry Bonds, this is like a segue to get Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame because David Ortiz is, but I think that the unisex races is kind of a segue for something in the future for the Olympics. And again, it's about money. It's about what makes money.
It very well could be. And those races were interesting because they're the top runners of those, like the ones that would have been running in the regular 4x4.
Mhm.
If I remember correct, I saw a few different races like that, not just in the Olympics, but a lot of times they're not the ones that are going to be running in the main 4x4. Now, Allison Felix did compete in that.
Right.
She was one of the main quarter runners, but mostly you don't get the ones that are going to be competing in the finals of the 4x4. Let's put it that way. Because you can change up teams and all like
But
that.
it never matters because anything involving running, Jamaica's always going to win.
No, they're not. No, they are not.
I'm just saying.
Unless Usain Bolt come. You know what? Never mind.
Stop it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Let me stop. I'll stop. All
right, man.
I know what I was going to say.
You ready for your guess?
Yeah, so this is the part of the show where Miguel stumps me every week. And, well, actually, not every week. Sometimes I do get it. Tooting my horn.
This is your sport this week, okay? You're going to remember, say it with your chest. Say the first thing that comes to mind, okay?
Okay. Don't say nothing, Ryan. Don't say anything yet. Spurs, Suns.
No. I'll give you the teams. It's the Spurs twice, 2 different times. The Houston Rockets. The Philadelphia 76ers twice. Orlando, the Charlotte Hornets, Sacramento, Seattle Supersonics, and Dallas, the Mavericks.
You missed one.
Oh, so the 2 times he played with the Sixers, those are the 2 jerseys.
Okay. Oh.
That's how they do it.
Uh-huh.
So technically 2 eras of the Sixers.
A 2-time NBA champ, and he played for, give me the Spurs, the Sixers twice, the Dallas Mavericks, the Orlando Magic, the Charlotte Hornets,
Seattle Supersonics, and Dallas.
No, not. Hersey Hawkins ain't never won a championship, did he?
Absolutely not.
Give me the era. Give me like the
90s.
I should have known that since it was Charlotte Hornets. I should have known
every single year of the 90s. The hint that I'll give
Jamal
you.
Mashburn?
No. The last 2 teams were the Sixers and Dallas.
Which one was first, the Sixers or Dallas?
Sixers.
So he ended his career with Dallas.
That is correct.
Damn. Damn. You got any guesses, R. Dot? R. Dot may have already looked it up by now.
No, I'm just thinking. And
what position did he play?
Shooting guard and point guard.
Wow.
In the 90s.
So the only guess that I have for that is Aaron McKee.
Oh, no, because Aaron McKee played for the Lakers too.
I was about to say, I know he didn't play.
He played for the Sixers twice.
It ain't Eric Snow.
Would it help if I gave you the first two teams he played for?
Yes.
San Antonio and Houston.
What?
First two teams were San Antonio and Houston.
Because I think if I give you the last guess,
Otis Thorpe was never a Sixer, and he was a forward. It's not Cassell. Vernon Maxwell.
Ding, ding, ding.
Boom. Yes. I don't know how. I didn't know Vernon Maxwell played for all those teams, but
he won two. He won 2 rings.
He was. So remember the 2 years that Jordan retired, who was the champion?
He won with the Rockets those 2 years.
Hakeem the Dream, baby.
Yeah, because he was playing side by side with Sam Cassell.
Yep.
And Robert Horry and all them and that. And I remember what they used to call him, Mad Max.
Mad Max, yep.
He said that was one of the craziest dudes in the league. He says one of the dudes that everybody has a dude that you don't mess with. And he was the dude on the team that you wouldn't mess with.
You know what's funny? As great as a player as he was, he never led in any category except for one. I think it was the first year he played for the Rockets. He played the most games, 82. He was the only player that played. That's the only category he ever led in his career. He's the Harold Baines of basketball.
Wow.
So he's probably going in the Hall of Fame first ballot.
One day I'm gonna have you guys debate Harold Baines versus Dick Allen. One day.
What'd you say?
So one day I'm gonna have you guys debate Harold Baines and Dick Allen.
There's no debate.
Well, not everybody thinks so.
Harold Baines got into the Hall of Fame because he showed up. and he knew Tony La Russa when he was drunk. That's the reason why he got into the Hall of Fame. Okay?
We're not going to get into this right now because we got to get out of here.
Pissed me off the last 5 minutes of the show.
We're not going to get into this right now. But what I want to do, I want to thank everybody for checking out the Check Swing podcast. Thank you very much. Thank you to Coach Hunter for joining us this evening. We appreciate you. Make sure you come back. Sir. Don't be a stranger. You know, we love having you on. With all that being, final thoughts. Miguel, you got a final thought before we get out of here? Any last word?
You brought up Harold Baines. It's like an ex-girlfriend. No, thank you, R. Dot, Coach Hunter, for blessing us with your presence and the Latino bandages and all that good stuff. Great conversation. We gotta do it again, man. And thank y'all for supporting and Cash App us.
Ching ching.
Hey, everybody that's still watching right now, make sure you hit that like button on whatever platform you're watching on, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, whatever the case may be. Make sure you hit that like button. Really helps us out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, and of course, make sure you share it and tell everyone about us, especially all the baseball fans, because we're brothers talking baseball when it comes down to it. All right. But Ardot, you already gave your last words. You want to give some last words again?
Nope.
You good? All right.
I appreciate y'all for having me, man. Look, that's it. I appreciate y'all for having me, man.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being on, man. And with that being said, we'll talk to y'all next week here on the Check Swing podcast. We out of here. We love y'all for loving us. Y'all be cool.
Bringing up Harold Baines.